afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth McIsaac, and I'm the president of Maytree, a private foundation dedicated to creating solutions to poverty, taking a human rights approach. We believe that the most enduring way to fix the systems that create poverty is to ensure that economic and social rights are respected, protected, and fulfilled for all people living in Canada. We also believe in strengthening our sector and the people who work in it, and that's why we're supporting the Common Good Plan. Maytree has been working with a coalition of philanthropic funders, sector leaders, and mission-driven business, Commonwealth Retirement, to create the Common Good Plan, a nationally portable workplace savings and retirement program for workers in our sector. After 3 years of sector consultation, feasibility study, and design and implementation work, the Common Good Plan was recently rolled out to an initial group of nonprofits from across Canada. In today's session, you will hear more about the plan and how it works. Now, while many of you are dialing in from across Canada, I am speaking to you from Toronto, and I'd like to begin today's session by acknowledging the land where we live and work and recognizing our responsibilities and relationships where we are. As we are meeting and connecting virtually today, I encourage you to acknowledge the place you occupy. I am, and Maytree is, on the historical territory of the Huron-Wendat, Petun, Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the New Credit Indigenous peoples. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands and resources around the Great Lakes. If you lead an organization, you may have always wanted to offer a retirement plan to your workforce, but you just didn't have any options that felt affordable. If you're working in the sector, especially with smaller nonprofits, you may have looked at your peers in the for-profit sector or larger nonprofits and wondered how you could ever be part of a retirement plan. Now there's an option, the Common Good Plan. This webinar will give you a quick introduction to this plan and how easy it is to use. Today's presenters work for Commonwealth Retirement, a mission-driven financial technology company that works with leading employers and professional associations to provide portable, collective retirement plans. Commonwealth Retirement is also the provider of the Common Good Plan. Connor Bays is the Director of Employer Solutions, and Kirk Wright is an account executive. For their full bios, you can download the handout, which has been posted in the chat room, and you can find the link there. It is now my pleasure to welcome Connor and Kirk. Connor, Kirk, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We're really excited to be here and be speaking with the group today. We have a great group on the line. So let's get straight into it. Elizabeth, as you mentioned, we're going to spend a few minutes providing an overview of Common Good. We're going to talk a little bit about the opportunity for nonprofit employers to build employee financial health. And the bulk of our time, we're going to focus on showing you the Common Good Plan, how it works, how it's different, and how you can use it to build financial security for your team or your organization. And then we'll leave time for Q&A. I won't spend too much time here. Elizabeth, you did a great job speaking to it, but I just wanted to thank Maytree again for your support and the whole team in pulling this webinar together, but also for supporting the 3+ years of research and coalition building that's gone behind this plan. We're showing here a few of the other champions and funders involved, both supporting the project philanthropically and helping spread the word in the nonprofit sector and grow this. It really is a partnership between not-for-profit sector leaders and champions on the one hand, including Maytree, and then retirement security experts on the other. And that's where we come in at Commonwealth to show you this plan today and give you a sense of how it works. The other piece that we really want to highlight and call out are the leading employers across the country who've started rolling this plan out for their teams. There's a sampling here on the page that we're showing you. Elizabeth, you touched on this as well, but employers across the country in the sector are joining Common Good. They range in size from 2 or 3 people to several hundred in terms of the organizations across different subsectors, groups, and geographies. So wanted to acknowledge this group and highlight the great work that's being done, and really excited to continue building the momentum and adding to this as well. So we'll start a little bit with the opportunity really that's in front of nonprofit sector organizations to build employee financial health, and in some ways the problem that we're trying to help solve for individuals and employers. What we want to share with you is a little bit of what the data says around planning for retirement and the challenge that your employees or your colleagues are likely facing. And what the data says is that nearly 3/4 or 3 in every 4 Canadians are concerned about having enough money in retirement. 1 in every 2 nonprofit employees does not have a plan for retirement savings or a way to build that security. And if you look at folks who don't have a good retirement plan, this is some data from the Broadbent Institute that found that the median retirement savings of households close to retirement without a workplace plan was just $3,000. So many folks reaching retirement without enough to maintain their standard of living or have enough in retirement. There's an element to the pandemic making this problem worse. I won't spend too much time here other than to say that we've seen a real impact on worker financial security as a result of COVID-19 and the disruption of the last year and a half. 35% of those on more modest incomes have stopped saving entirely due to the pandemic. So there's an equity issue here too. And 60% of Canadians, including Gen Z, are worried about the effect of the pandemic on their saving and retirement plans. So this is something that affects not just older workers, but younger ones as well. So that's where Common Good comes in. The idea is delivering an easy to use, high value workplace retirement plan that's flexible, it's low cost, it's easy for an employer to offer, and helps give your team that true retirement plan that helps solve those questions, reduce financial anxiety, attract and retain great staff, and fundamentally build a more secure and sustainable workforce in the sector. So getting into how it works, the Common Good Plan is based on 5+ years of research and development on what works in retirement planning and saving. And what we've aimed to do is roll those elements into a plan that's easy to access and easy to use. But fundamentally, it's about helping you and your employees and your colleagues do 6 key things consistently: smart saving, smart investing, low fees, minimizing taxes, optimizing government benefits, and portability. And I'm going to pass it over to Kirk to talk through some of these things and actually show you how they come together in the Common Good Plan itself.
Thanks, Connor. The first one we want to dive into before looking at the platform itself is talking a bit about low fees and the idea that you don't want to pay more than you need to. In Canada, we actually pay some of the highest investment fees in the world. A typical Canadian saving for retirement, either on their own or as part of a smaller group plan, will generally be paying something in the range of about 2% per year on their investments that they're saving for retirement. Now, with Common Good, members pay a fee of 0.6%, which is about 70% less than what the typical fee would be for Canadian saving for retirement. This is a really big difference, and it's something that adds up hugely over time. And when you compare these fees to what's typical across some other comparable economies, it's really quite a striking difference that adds up over one's career saving for retirement. Just to illustrate what that looks like, this is an illustrative scenario of $50,000 invested over 25 years with an annual return of 5%. And this is comparing what that investment growth would look like for a typical Rrsp at that 2.0% fee, and what it would look like with Common Good's fee of 0.6%. And it really shows that a huge percentage of that investment growth, in this case, it's going to be $42,000, is lost to high fees over time. That's $42,000 that could be in your pocket going towards your retirement, but instead it's going to the bank or whoever it is who's managing those investments. So that's one really important factor that's built into Common Good, and it's one that is a really key factor, a key principle behind good retirement planning. The next piece is on portability and making sure you're able to take your plan with you from job to job and into retirement. What typically happens with many smaller and medium-sized group retirement plans is that often people might have access to a lower fee if they're leveraging the size of the group, and they may have other benefits like education and fiduciary duty as part of that group plan, But often when they leave that group plan and go to another job or to retire, a lot of those benefits that they had disappear. With Common Good, the plan's designed to follow your staff members from job to job, periods of not working, part-time, self-employed, all the way into retirement, where things actually become even more complex in some ways, and you really need access to both those low fees as well as education and help accessing government benefits programs. So it's really important to be able to have a plan you can stick to and do all those 6 key things that Connor spoke to throughout your career and all the way throughout your retirement. Now, we've spoken a little bit about some of these topics, but the best way to show it is to look at the platform itself and how Common Good helps your staff members to save for their retirement and build a holistic retirement plan. So I'll switch over my screen share here.
While Kirk brings that up, one question we often get is, what type of organization is this most relevant for? And Elizabeth touched on this at the beginning, but Common Good, the primary focus for us is expanding access to a good, high quality scaled group plan to workers who don't have access today. The 2 main types of employers we're typically finding the greatest value from Common Good are employers who may offer some kind of retirement benefit today, like an Rrsp matching program or a group Rrsp through a legacy life insurer, who want to improve the value for money they're getting from that program and have something a bit higher quality, or organizations who want to get started with retirement saving for their team and bring in a plan for the first time. We'll talk a bit at the end about how we can serve both those types of use cases for organizations.
Thanks, Connor. The process we're going to walk through is the enrollment process for a member joining a Common Good plan for the first time. So through this process, like Connor mentioned, we want to build a holistic retirement plan that takes into account people's current situation and helps set them on a path for success in the future. And there are 3 key steps that we're going to go through in this process: planning, saving, and growing. So we'll start with the planning step, where we're going to set a target for their retirement savings and try to understand where people are at today in their retirement savings journey. So here we'll take into account this member's age, the target retirement date, as well as their annual income. And we'll help them to do the math to understand what they're likely to need on a monthly basis once they reach retirement. It's really important to frame this savings target in terms of that idea of retirement income, because it's grounded in reality in what they're actually going to look to be solving for, which is, when I retire, how much money am I going to need? There's flexibility built into the platform throughout this process that you'll see. There's always the ability to edit these values, but it's really important to provide these strong default recommendations to help bring people in the right direction when it comes to their savings, and make sure that they're set up with a plan that is designed for them. The next step in the planning piece is understanding where people are at in their savings journey today. Now, for many people joining the plan, this is the first steps they're taking in saving for retirement, and that's totally fine. We want to make sure we're meeting people where they are. But if you have been saving for retirement, we want to make sure we take that into account and understand how that factors into your target retirement income. So this individual may have $20,000 saved in an RRS, $10,000 saved in the Tfsa. They may have a registered pension plan from a previous employer. And again, we're going to help them to do the math to understand, based on the savings they've already done, what is that likely to mean in terms of their monthly income in retirement, and how does that relate to that target we set in the first step of $3,500 per month. The last piece of this planning step is understanding government benefits. This is an area that many Canadians don't have a clear understanding of, but in the enrollment process, it's actually often a bit of a light bulb moment when people see how significant their eligibility for these programs is going to be and how big that is going to be as part of their retirement income. The 3 programs we want to make sure people understand in this phase is old age security, Canada Pension Plan, and the Guaranteed Income Supplement. We'll help members to understand what their eligibility will be for these programs, and similarly layer it in to that view on the target retirement income. As you can see for this individual, their government benefits is actually going to take up over half of that target retirement income. These programs are really important to take into account, and they actually are really beneficial in people's retirement income picture because of their structure as well, providing essentially a guaranteed income for life structure. So whether you're living till the age of 80 or 120, those government benefits programs are income that you can count on a monthly basis. Now that we've done that planning phase and setting a target and trying to understand where you're at in your current savings journey, we want to move into the savings phase and understand, okay, what next? What do I need to do on a monthly basis to reach my goals? And the first step here is going to be making sure that you're taking advantage of an employer matching contribution. So this individual is enrolling with an employer who's offering a 5% match. Within Common Good, there's a lot of flexibility in designing your plan. So, we can accommodate different percentage-based matching levels. Also, we can implement something called a flat dollar matching structure. So matching up to say $1,000 per year for every plan member. There's also the option to provide multiple matching scenarios. So some employers might want to provide a higher matching benefit based on tenure. There's a lot of flexibility, and we work really closely with employers to design a plan that makes sense for them and their team, both from a standpoint of optimizing for success for retirement savings and also for fitting into budgets as well.
Just
when there is a matching,
sorry, I'll jump in there, Kirk, and just say that this element around flexibility was something that we heard a lot about when conducting surveys and employer roundtables in the design phase for Common Good. And what we heard was there's a real range of organizations out there who haven't provided a retirement plan historically and so want to get started. And there are others who have something fairly robust in place and want to get the most out of the dollars they're already contributing to employees' retirement savings. So that might be, a higher match, 8 or 10% at the high end. It might be, just 1 or 2 or a flat dollar, as Kirk said, to get started. We can accommodate anything within that range. And as Kirk said, we often work with employers to help design something that works for you, fits within your budget, is competitive in your subsector, and and it works for your employees.
And when there is a matching contribution, we do really recommend that we make it easy for members to take full advantage of that, because for saving for retirement, it's the single most important thing you can do today is to really make sure you're taking advantage of those matching dollars. There is flexibility to change that value, which I'll show in the next page here. If people do want to contribute above and beyond that matching level, we really do encourage people to do that. So you're able to contribute up to 8% here, for example, or even higher, and you'll still only get that 5% from your employer. Some members will choose to contribute at a lower level, and they'll still get that 3% match in this case, because they're only contributing 3%. This step really does highlight where those contributions are coming from. So showing that not only is this member going to be contributing about $115 per paycheck on their own, it's really highlighting that matching contribution that you as an employer are making to show how that all fits together into their savings. This piece is a really important one. So, we looked at where those contributions are coming from, the member and the employer. This step shows where they're going into the Tfsa and the Rrsp. So Common Good is built around the tax-free savings account and the registered retirement savings plan. These are the two primary accounts that Canadians often use to save for retirement. And it's really important to use both of them effectively to help optimize for taxes and minimize your government benefits. We're going to help members with a default recommendation on where it's likely best for them to put their money to save to optimize for taxes and government benefits. This is going to be based largely on the plan member's income level. So for this individual, they're earning $60,000 per year. It's likely best for them to save with the Rrsp and take advantage of that tax deduction today. Conversely, one thing that is often forgotten about in typical legacy group retirement plans is folks who are earning around $50,000 or less. And for those individuals, it's actually often much more beneficial to save with the Tfsa to make sure that you're protecting and maximizing your government benefits eligibility in retirement.
This is probably a good spot to talk about the education piece as well. So part of the mission of the plan and the initiative is to raise nonprofit sector workers financial education and knowledge of these topics and help them make good decisions. So you'll see that in the enrollment process or in the platform of the plan itself, there are little nudges and things designed in to help people make good decisions, this being an example of how to most effectively use your tax advantage savings accounts. We supplement this with a significant amount of other education and support to help members. So for example, you can see that throughout the experience here, there are tooltips, links to articles, there's lots of content on the Common Good website that people can read. We also supplement this with more hands-on support. So for example, if you are an employer and you're implementing Common Good, we will start with an all-hands education session for you and your team, where an expert from the plan will come in and explain the setup, answer common retirement questions, provide a demonstration of how people can enroll, and make sure they have opportunity to ask and answer questions as a group. And then what we also typically do is give employees the option to book a one-on-one appointment or consultation with a retirement expert, so they can go through these steps with a real person. And that can be to enroll in the plan, or it can be to simply ask and get questions answered around things like, how do RRSPs work? How do TFSAs work? More about the government benefits or things of that nature. So you may have employees or you yourself who want to join this plan and just do everything self-serve. You can do that. It takes about 15 minutes to go through this process to enroll if you're an employee of a workplace offering it. But you do have the ability to access that enhanced or higher touch education as well to support people. And we have some great partners, including Prosper Canada and Smart Saver, two great charities we're working with to enhance that education and government benefits piece even further.
Like Connor said, the default recommendation is really what most people do stick with. There is always the flexibility, as I mentioned earlier, to change this if you do want to say stick with the TFSA instead. But we do really recommend that people stick with that default recommendation here. And after this step, this member now has a fairly clear view about when looking at that $3,500 target monthly retirement income, where that's going to come from, covering government benefits, their current savings that they've already made, and what this plan is going to be able to do for them. So now we've covered the planning phase and the saving phase. The next step is on growing your savings. And when we talk about investing and growing savings for retirement, there are two really key things that people need to get right to achieve retirement success. And one is going to be adequate diversification in their asset allocation. And the other is going to be appropriately managing risk as they age. So within Common Good, we've we've partnered with an asset manager called Blackrock to offer an approach to investing called target date funds. Now, Blackrock is actually the world's largest asset manager, and they're a pioneer of this approach to investing in Canada. And a recent research out of the Pension Research Council at the University of Pennsylvania actually showed that this approach to investing can yield up to 2.3% higher annual returns than a typical individual approach to investing. And it also, and when you look at the effects of that over time, it can actually lead up to 50% more retirement income over a 30-year savings period. So it's a really important way to achieve that diversification and that appropriate risk management. That's something that typically isn't available to an individual, something that they're not able to do on their own. Just to illustrate how these target date funds work, for this member, she's 35 years old, planning to retire at about age 65, she'll be matched with a target date fund based on her target retirement age, in this case, the 2050 fund. And that fund is going to be designed for her and her planned retirement date. So at age 35, she can withstand a little bit more short-term volatility in favor of higher growth potential, because she doesn't have to access those funds for another 30 years. In that case, she'll have a higher concentration of stocks initially, with higher growth potential, a little bit more short-term volatility, with less in the bonds and real estate and infrastructure classes. However, when she reaches her retirement age of 65, she can't afford that same level of short-term volatility, because she needs to start drawing down on those funds and turning the nest egg that she's been building into a steady stream of retirement income. In this case, you'll want a much more conservative asset allocation, as you can see here. And this fund is going to make sure that at each year in between, that asset allocation is properly managed to optimize for risk and growth, and make sure that it follows an optimized path towards a retirement. Now that we've covered the plan, saving, and growing phases, we just have to confirm our plan summary here. Terms and agreements. And we've set up our plan. I'll briefly just show here the member dashboard and what this looks like. So this is a resource that members can go to at any time if they want to track progress, make changes to their plan, or update information. It's always available to them, and it acts as a hub for their management of their retirement plan. There are a couple of things I wanted to highlight briefly here that members can do through this dashboard. One is going to be to set up a monthly contribution through their bank account. So as you can see, this member's got a $280 per month gap to their target retirement income. If they wanted to close that gap, we offer some tools to help them get there. So here we'll provide a recommendation on what kind of a monthly contribution they would need to make if they wanted to close that full gap to their target retirement income. For many people, they're not able to start right away contributing at that level. So we've provided some other tools to help people understand what's needed to reach that target level. So if this person wanted to start at $50 per month instead, for instance, we've got a tool called auto escalation that's built on Nobel Prize winning research to help them understand, if I were to start at that lower savings level today, what would I need to do in the next 3 or 4 years to reach that target level of retirement savings? And it helps build a plan in advance that they can commit to reach that target level. Another way that people like to contribute to the plan is through transferring in an existing TFSA or Rrsp from another institution, or making a lump sum contribution. The transferring in is actually something that many members do if they want to take advantage of those low fee, risk appropriate investment options with Blackrock, because often people are paying a higher fee and might not have an investment approach that's tailor-made for retirement for them in their current individual approach. So it's a really simple process to either transfer in or make a lump sum contribution, and we'll take care of all of the transfer process in the back end and make sure that members are able to consolidate their funds and keep everything under one umbrella, which can make things much simpler for them. Now that covers the demo and the demonstration. Was there anything, Connor, you wanted to mention before we move over to looking at some questions?
Yeah, I think maybe we can cover sort of next steps before we get to questions. You know, we've covered a lot of the ground today and the value of the plan and how it works. Maybe I'll just speak to what people can do if they want to learn more. So this is a bit of a taster today in terms of how the plan works and what it's all about. If you are interested in offering common good for your organization or joining it, there was a question, I know someone mentioned they have an existing RSP plan. Is it possible with common good? We can work with you to help answer those questions on a more specific basis for your organization. The best next step, if you are interested, is to book a short consultation with our team. There's a link that we've posted with the bios in the chat. We can post it again. You can find it on the Common Good website at commongoodplan.ca. But that will typically be a 30 or 40-minute consultation to help understand how this plan could work for you and your team. And you can always follow us or subscribe to learn more as well. But maybe with that, we'll go into questions.
Thank you, Connor and Kirk. That was amazing, really comprehensive. And I just loved the walkthrough and being able to see how you can sort of customize individuals and how they want to shape their savings plan. So that was really great. Thank you. The questions are rolling in, as one would expect, because there's lots of details around this. A couple of questions are touching on what if you have mostly older employees rather. How does this work? I'm already 50, 55, whatever. Is this something worth looking at? And what if the majority of my workforce is older? Not that 50 is old, but.
That's a great question. It's one that we often get. If you're older, is this plan relevant for you? And the short answer is yes. And it's yes for a few reasons. One point to make around this that Kirk briefly showed is that you don't have to start with zero in Common Good. You can actually transfer in existing assets that you have or existing savings. So we have over half of plan members typically moving in existing RSP or TFSA savings. And so if you're an older member and have something saved up, it's never too late to start. But if you do have something saved already, you can move that into Common Good. And then what really makes a big difference is the fees you pay, the investment program you have, all of those decisions around retirement saving and planning actually become more important as you move into retirement. So having a plan that helps you get a low fee, helps you have an investment program that's tailored for retirement, all the elements Kirk just showed you actually become more important in some ways as you enter retirement.
Great. So you've talked about transferring assets in. There's a question regarding portability. Can an employee keep contributing to this plan even if they exit a workplace that did a match and enter another workplace that doesn't use Common Good? So can you keep using this as a tool once you leave?
Yeah, you absolutely can. So if you join through an employer, you're contributing typically through payroll. That's the sort of standard setup. But once you leave that employer, you can continue to contribute to your Common Good plan. You'll just do it from your bank account. So you continue to pay a low fee. All the aspects of your plan stay the same in terms of the investment program and all that. It's just the contributions will be coming only from you. There won't be that employer contribution or match, unless you move to an employer who also offers Common Good, in which case you'll just start receiving new matching contributions from your new employer.
Okay, and then kind of the flip of it, can you just have contributing from one side? So one person asks, we currently contribute to staff individual RSPs without any requirement for them to match. Can we still do this with your plan?
You can, yeah. So to the flexibility piece, if you have a design like that where you're just making contributions to employees and not requiring them to add something themselves, you can do that through Common Good also, absolutely.
Great. So this is, I think, a bigger question, and someone wants to learn more about risk. And so what happens to how are these savings affected in the event of a market crash? We all want guarantees. So how do people think about risk as it relates to the plan?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I mean, a few different thoughts there. Managing risk as you age is really important. And that is one of the main things that the approach that Common Good selected to investments around that target date fund that Kirk showed. That's one of the reasons it's so powerful. And the mechanism there is, as you're close to retirement, you actually don't want to be taking a lot of risk, because if in the example that the person asking this question posed, if the market crashes tomorrow and you're drawing down your savings, you're starting to use them to fund your lifestyle, pay for your expenses, you're going to lock in those losses. You're going to have a smaller base to grow from, and you might be in a pretty tricky situation. So you want to de-risk as you get close to needing your funds. However, if you're a 30-year-old, you don't need your retirement savings for 30, 35 years. You're much less vulnerable to that type of risk that the member mentioned. So it's okay to have more of your money in the stock market, because a market drop tomorrow isn't going to impact you much. You just want to stay invested, ride it out, not worry too much about it. And, in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25, 30 years, you're going to get that more steady growth over time. And you're not going to have to worry too much about those near-term ups and downs.
Great, thank you. So a couple of technical questions. Can an employer set this up for their employees without making a contribution at the outset? If not, is there a minimum amount the employer has to contribute? And the third part to this, are employees obligated to utilize or choose this platform for their investments if the employer becomes a member?
Yeah, I mean, I guess broadly, flexibility again. So there is a minimum $50 per month contribution if an employee is choosing to join and make a monthly contribution. So you can't join and only put in $1 a month. It has to be 50 minimum for that monthly. There's no minimum amount from the employer side. So again, flexibility. If you want to start small, you can do that. A great option for employers who don't have the budget this year, for example, to do a more robust match. They can start with a design that we recommend for an employer in that situation, where you set a fixed dollar amount. So you can say, we're going to match up to $500 per employee or $200 per employee. That's a great way of still providing that incentive and helping staff join and start saving in a way that's pretty cost certain and not expensive by any means. Should be hopefully affordable for most employers.
Great, thank you. So here's a question for you to do your sales pitch. Why should an employer choose this plan over anything else?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess it would come down to a couple things, getting a lower fee, getting the power of the group, reducing the costs for investments and what you're paying to build retirement security for you and your team. That's big. It's a sector-wide national plan using the power of the group to do that. And then the second key thing is giving you and your staff a real retirement plan, factoring in government benefits, factoring in taxes, having an investment approach that manages risk in the way that those target date funds through Blackrock does. Those are the things we all need to do to save for retirement successfully. If you're a smaller employer or an individual, it's very difficult to get a retirement plan that gives you all those elements and gives them to you at a low cost. So that fundamentally is the gap we're aiming to fill with Common Good.
So someone wants to dig into why the fees are so low. You've mentioned how low they are comparing with the rest of the market where we go in individually. Why would the fees with the Common Good plan be so much lower than the average? Your fees are more than 3 times lower. How did you do that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Comes down to, I think, two things. One would be the power of the group and scale. So if you look at larger pension and retirement plans, their fees are a lot lower, not just Common Goods, but if you're an employer with several thousand employees, you're not going to be paying 2%, or your staff aren't going to be paying 2%. It's going to be a lot lower. The challenge is really for those employers with a couple hundred employees or 10 or 20, or especially people as individuals going to your bank as an individual. That's where we tend to see really high fees. So part of it's a group approach. And why are fees so high in Canada? That's another question. We probably don't have time to get into that one, but it is globally acknowledged that especially for individuals and small group plans, we have some of the highest fees in the world. That comes down a little bit to there being a bit of an oligopoly when it comes to the existing financial providers. So getting a group plan, using the power of the group, using scale, that's a good way to get those fees lower and more in line with a larger employer plan. That answers the question.
Great, thank you. A couple of just, I think, questions of clarification. Is the Common Good plan only for employees from the nonprofit sector? And is Common Good a nonprofit organization?
Great question. So Common Good is aimed at nonprofits and charities. It's not exclusively. If you're a mission-driven business or aligned with the values, you can join. It's not open to you. It's more about the orientation and how we focus education and things like that. So we do have mission-driven businesses and others who've joined the plan, usually in sort of nonprofit adjacent parts of the sector. And so Common Good, in terms of the organization, it is a partnership of different groups. So there's a plan provider. Kirk and I work for Commonwealth. We administer the plan in partnership with the Common Good entity that's more about education and the other elements of it. So it's kind of a unique partnership in that sense.
Great, thank you. And just another clarification, do you work with individuals or only with organizations?
Right now, we only work with employers. So in order to join Common Good, your employer needs to sign up and offer it, and that's how you join. And then once you've become a member, you can stay even if you leave that employer. So that's a nuance there. We are hoping in the coming months to enable folks who don't have a traditional employment relationship to join the plan. So I'd say stay tuned for that. If you're a freelancer or someone like that, self-employed, and you don't have an employer, we're hoping to be able to serve that group too shortly. But today, main thing is for employers to sign up to give access to their staff.
Okay, and there's just another, just slightly different worded, but I think you may have already answered it. Can an employee set this up for themselves without going through their employer? And I guess the answer is not at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully coming soon. But
Yep.
best thing right now is get your employer to look at offering this if you're interested.
All right, great, thank you. So I think that answered a few questions. Another technical question, can an employer reduce their contribution if they suffer a funding downturn?
Yeah, flexibility there too. If you need to change the level of matching you're doing, or if you're an employee that needs to change what you're doing, you always have the flexibility to do that.
Great. I like this question, and this is a bit of a reiteration of, I think you've covered some of this already, but the financial literacy component is really relevant for many agencies, as this is not an area of expertise for many social service workers. Can you recap the options for having a presentation for staff?
Yeah, so we recommend, and by default, we have a presentation for staff with every employer that we bring into the plan, whether you're 2 people or 200. So we'll have a session. Typically, it's an all hands type of meeting where you have an expert from Common Good with a background in pension and retirement saving, delivering that presentation and doing the kind of Q&A. And then typically for employers as well, we do offer those one-on-one appointments as well for staff who need a little bit extra support.
So you kind of answered this by saying if it's 2 employees or 200, but somebody just asked if there's a minimum number of employees for an organization to sign up. And I was mindful when I looked at the list of who was attending today, there was a number that had less than 10 employees. So is there a minimum threshold?
There's no minimum. So we can serve you no matter your size, whether you're 200 or 20 or 10 or 2.
All right. Here's a question about who you're working with. Thank you for the great presentation. What is the extent of your interaction with Blackrock?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've selected Blackrock as our investment manager partner, and we chose them for a number of different reasons. A little bit about Blackrock, just quickly, they are the world's largest asset manager. So Blackrock manages over $8 trillion US. They are the leading provider for larger pension plans and institutional investors. So again, coming back to the benefit of the plan to smaller employers and individuals, part of what we're able to do as a scaled sector-wide plan is give you access to an asset manager like Blackrock, who we've contracted to be the provider. In the future, we may choose someone else if for whatever reason the plan feels like there's a better option out there. But we think Blackrock, in terms of being the leader in the market and providing the great funds they do, is a great option.
Okay. Someone is asking if you can please clarify when and where fees are applied.
It's a great question. So the member fee that Kirk alluded to or described, that 0.6% that's paid by the member on the assets they have in the plan, that's 0.6% calculated on an annual basis, and it's just deducted from whatever is inside the member's account. So it's deducted monthly, it's 0.6% annually is what it adds up to, and it comes just straight out of whatever the member has in their balance. We also have an employer subscription fee, which is what you as an employer pay to give your members access. That's usually around $10 or less per employee per month, and that's paid by you, the employer.
Okay, great. Other than lower fee, how highly qualified are the investment advisors at Common Good as compared to private banking groups in the Big Five?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, coming back to the approach that the plan takes, a real challenge people have today is that if they go to their bank to save for retirement or open an RSP, they'll often be speaking with someone who may have the title financial advisor, but is really more of a salesperson. And there's a real issue there in terms of people being put in kind of higher fee accounts and things like that. The approach we take is Common Good actually has a fiduciary duty to plan members, which means we are legally obligated to act in the plan members' best interests and do what is likely to generate retirement income for them. And then the key decisions around the plan, like what options are available and what members can access, the fund lineup, all of that stuff, that's determined at the plan level in partnership with some real experts who are advisors on this. There's more on the website, but for example, our technical advisory committee includes Ed Waitzer, who's a former chair of the Ontario Securities Commission. It includes Keith Ambitshire, who's the Director Emeritus of the Centre for Pension Management at the University of Toronto. So there's some real retirement expertise behind this that members get access to.
Okay, I've got two follow-on questions to the one around Blackrock. One is, first of all, thank you for the great presentation. Love the flexibility, access to a larger pool. As Blackrock is new to the ESG world, have you created some ESG expectations or thresholds for them to consider in their investment choices? And likewise, are the investments made in ethical funds? And could you request this if this is not the norm?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that subject generally around ethical or ESG investing is probably the single most common question we get from plan members. One of the reasons we're excited to be working with Blackrock is they are a bit more sophisticated on this question than most of the domestic kind of Canadian providers. So Blackrock, for example, has played a leadership role in kind of pushing portfolio companies and groups in the US to do things like have targets around the Paris Climate Accords, or have board members that are pushing companies to do that. So part of why we chose Blackrock is they are, further ahead in that area than many. There's a lot more work to do there. Part of what we're excited about as a larger scale sector-wide plan is we actually have a bigger voice in terms of pushing providers to do something. So we think, the market's evolving quickly. There isn't, this isn't the end state in terms of ESG or ethical investing, but having a voice there and being a larger group to push asset managers to do better there is the role we can play. And we have some great folks involved in the Common Good Plan who are giving us, support and guidance there. And, we know it's important to members, so we're really excited about how that can evolve in the future.
Okay. Someone subsequently asked if corporate social responsibility investing is a priority, and I think you've answered that. Okay. So a couple of technical questions, back to the technical. The minimum contribution per employee you said was $50 a month. Is there a minimum for the organization?
No, there is not.
There we go, done. Clarification, the employer must pay $10 per employee per month. So for 40 employees, the employer would pay $4,800. That's a lot of money for a nonprofit to pay, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's right. It's $10 per month per employee for the administrative side. We talk about this quite a lot with employers. We've tried to be very transparent in terms of how fees are charged and the costs that employers and members pay. Typically, that subscription fee to give members access is a small percentage of the overall cost. The main thing that you need to think about budget-wise if you're an employer is what level of contribution you're going to make. On the transparency piece, one of the issues in the market today is typically all costs are just rolled into the member fee. So if you're an employer offering a group Rrsp program, you as the employer might pay no, explicit costs yourself, but everything is kind of put on to the member. We're trying to be much more transparent and have a separate cost for the employer that covers things like education and member support. It's quite reasonable. It's comparable to a larger pension plan, and then provide a really rock bottom low fee for the member. So again, the overall costs are about 70% less than most group plans. We do kind of split things out in a bit more of a transparent way when it comes to the fee.
Great, thank you. Really quick, I think one answer questions. Do you do presentations to unions?
Yes, for sure.
Do you provide support in French?
We have some limited member support in French. Today, the platform is English only. We will at some point have things fully in French, so best to talk to us, but primarily English today with some French member support.
Okay. Transactional, how are funds remitted to the plan by the employer? Is there an online form that is uploaded and the bank account debited, or is this a paper remittance and check kind of business?
That is a great question. That's something actually that we didn't touch enough on probably. It's fully digital. There is no paper. And the way that the questionnaire framed that is basically how it works. It's tied to your payroll process. And every month we debit the correct amount from your bank account based on what's reflected in your payroll system. So when you onboard as an employer, there's a little bit of setup to make sure we're kind of synced with your payroll process. But then every month, there's no paper or forms involved. We're debiting the right amounts, and it's part of your monthly payroll run.
Okay. And just another clarification, do all employees have to be part of the program if the employer is? Would the subscription fee be only for those employees who are enrolled?
So not all employees need to be part of it. If you want to make it open to employees, but some choose not to join, that's fine. And then to the second part of the question, the questioner put it correctly. You only pay the subscription fee for employees who do enroll. So if you offer it to 100 and only 50 sign up, you're supporting those 50 in terms of the monthly subscription.
Okay, great. And I would say that we have gone through all the questions that came into the Q&A. Thank you to everybody who has contributed questions. I've noticed one question I think has appeared in the chat and the Q&A, which is the recording itself. So I remind you that we will be posting this on our website next week. And so that's available, which is great. It looks like people want to present this to their board or at least refer it to other people. So with that, I want to say thank you. I want to thank Connor and Kirk for taking the time and presenting what is sometimes a really complicated thing to get your head around. I know that whenever I think about financial stuff, my head starts to go like that. So you just did it in such a clear and accessible way. So thank you. And I think our participants have been highly engaged, and also lots of thank yous and great presentation coming up. I also want to thank everybody who joined us today. Everyone is busy. There's lots of stuff going on, and so we really appreciate you giving the time to this. We think it's an important and promising product for the sector to help support better work for their employees, better savings, and sort of future planning.